Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're doing a slightly different thing. This is our first real podcasty type episode. So strap in, I suppose. This will be quite a long one, although I know my videos are a little bit on the longer end. Taking a look at a discussion video on FIFA here. It's going to be entirely just off my own kind of desires for the game, what I want to see, all the changes, kind of reminiscing over some of the old FIFAs maybe, and talking about just what this game is and what it should be. It's something I've wanted to do for a while. I've kind of alluded to this in my past couple videos, so it's time. I thought about doing this in kind of 4 parts. We might, kind of like gameplay, splitting that into 2, and then content, SBCs, rewards, splitting that into 2. I think we're just going to do menu as one video and gameplay as another. So this first one, we'll just do gameplay and kind of include all of it in one. And the next one after this, of course, will be everything outside of the actual matches themselves. But I just want to go over, why this game feels so different this year to me, why the game's felt different the last couple of years, and just what kind of direction they're taking, and why it's the wrong choice. And to me, it feels rather objective. Now, you can think this is your favorite FIFA, and I will have no qualms about it. If this is what you've enjoyed the most, there's a myriad of reasons as to why that could be. Maybe this is your specific playstyle, and despite it being, I think, the worst meta we've had in FIFA, if this is the one that's for you, I can't knock you enjoying the game. A big reason why I don't like the whole 4-2-1-3 thing is just I don't get the sense that any of my opponents are enjoying the game. In the way that you can tell, sometimes, the opponent's actually playing the style that is really actually maybe something they're replicating in real life, or something that's, it doesn't have to be realistic, but something fun, something video gaming, something arcadey. But everything in the past couple of years is just mechanic after mechanic, and everybody just gravitates to the new mechanics, and nobody's actually a fan of anything. Nobody tries to play a certain way. It's all just whatever is most powerful and easiest to do at the time. And you can argue maybe FIFA's kind of always been like that, but it's the competitive push that makes it worse as well. Obviously, the game's kind of gone competitive since FIFA 17, and we're going to talk about that, but every year it just seems more and more and more competitive, in my opinion. And so I think a good baseline to start with here is going to be just kind of discussing what the game kind of has gone through over the past couple of years. So I want to discuss, I'm somebody who's played, I guess my first FIFA was technically 06. I was an actual kid back then. But then, I've played, I think, the World Cup version of 06, and then 09. Then I played 10 career mode, 11 career mode, 12 career mode, I believe. I think I played those all. And 13 was my first Ultimate Team, and I've played Ultimate Team ever since. So I've got 12 years experience on this game, and I've seen it go through just change after change after change here, most of which I don't think have really been in the right direction. So to kind of exemplify what those changes have been, let's kind of go through. So I think 14 or 15 was the introduction of Draft, I believe. 16 might have been SBCs. I don't have this exactly, but it's going to be a decent, it's just a baseline, right? I think 16 was SBCs. 17 would have been the change to divisions, as well as the introduction of foot champs. And I think might have been the inclusion of squad battles. 18, I think we had the 40, FIFA 17 was 40 games. I think 18 was 30, and we kept with 30 for a while, and then they dropped it to 20, and now it's down to 15. So there's always that kind of change in the game modes, but 17 was also rivals, so we got rid of the division system. That would have been when squad battles came in, so they got rid of offline divisions as well. I think 19 would have been, I don't actually recall any changes to the gameplay with 19. That might have been the introduction of low driven shots, though. Of course, every FIFA we get new mechanics. I think maybe 18, 19, 20-ish around then would have been player locks and player directions you could have started making. Low drivens were 17, 18-ish. La Croquetas were, there's always that new skill move. So La Croquetas were, I think, 17 or 18. Directional nutmegs were 20 or 21. So there's always that kind of thing, right? But then we haven't really been having those changes in the same way recently. It's more an adjustment to the current system we've already got. By which, I should probably mention, Draft has not had a change since 15, right? They have not adjusted that game mode whatsoever. And every once in a while we get a World Cup FIFA. I think 14 and 18 maybe. We got actual World Cup game modes, which were incredibly fun. And I do wish we had those for the World Cup years once again. Changes to the game, just what it is, I think during the summer are always a good idea too, and it allows them to test things when the game's a little bit, not as popular during the summer months, of course. But again, we haven't had a massive change to the actual game modes we're playing for a while. It's just a change to the games or the requirements, how many games per week you're playing. We've had changes to the mechanics the past couple years. So that's been, I think there were a couple changes to the custom tactics system. It might have been 21 or 22. Every once in a while there's an adjustment to the in-game tactics you could use. One year they take away overload boss side or something. One year they kind of adjust whether or not the meta's park the bus or aggression, team press and all that. But then 23, and these are the three main things I want to talk about, so we're getting to the meat of it here. 23 was the introduction of explosive, controlled, and lengthy accelerate types. 24 was the introduction of playstyles. And 25 was the introduction of roles. All of which have been kind of necessary, and also the worst changes that have ever been made to any FIFAs. Each one, I think, probably progressively worse. Even though my least favorite is the first, I think it's also the least harmful to the game. I think it was really the sign of them just doing it incorrectly or not knowing what they're doing, or knowing precisely what they're doing this very, very intentionally, but taking the game in a specific path that it is not designed to go on, that this community is not built for, that the game itself is not built for. So let's start with the accelerate types. We're going to go through, so again, 23 was explosive, controlled, and lengthy. 24, I think, was they added mostly controlled and mostly lengthy. And then this year we've got controlled explosive and controlled lengthy, I think. So they just keep adding more ones in between, right? But the introduction of this is absolutely silly to me. The main reason why is it takes away control from you. That you have to use certain cards with certain playstyles, which means you can't customize them to the extent that you used to and just be able to buff whatever stats you want. You've got to keep in mind 2 stats exclusively. If you don't know how the accelerate tabs work, it's based on how tall you are, and then if your strength stat, your strength stat in relation to your agility stat. So if you want to be agile, you have to have 15 more strength. No, you have to have 15 more agility than the strength stat you have. And to be explosive, you've got to be a certain height under 5'9". If you're 5'10" and over, you have to be at least mostly explosive. If you're 6 foot and over, you've got to be at least controlled, I believe it is. And again, absolutely ridiculous. It's not really based on anything realistic. You can have players in real life. Obviously, there's a tendency to having a more powerful, slower acceleration, but more powerful sprint if you're a taller player. But it's just not actually how people work in real life for that kind of thing. Not somewhere like football. Obviously with sprinting, when you're kind of using your body in that way, it's a little bit different, but football, you get so many different attributes for players because you can be a top level player for so many different reasons, right? So part of it's just taking away the control from you. You can't use the playstyles you want if you want a certain accelerate style, and that can just tend to lead to you not using specific cards. FIFA 23, I was using a Foot Birthday Messi over Team of the Year Messi, because on a certain chem style with the stats that he had, it might have been 24 actually, I forget. But despite this 94 Foot Birthday Messi being a worse card than the 97-98 Team of the Year one, and me being able to afford both either way, the Foot Birthday one was much easier to make explosive on the right chem style for me, and that was just the way I preferred to go. If it was just a little toggle in the menu where you press R3 on a player and it pulls up, their stats page, their attributes, all that. If it was just in there and you got to select what accelerate style they are, it wouldn't be as big of a deal in my opinion. But what they've got instead is just a ridiculous system. A, you've got to memorize all this stuff. And B, again, it takes away so much control you have over the cards. And I think that was part of their idea with playstyles, was to give you more control. But the only way we actually get control now is evolutions. And the evolutions are worth mentioning, one of the better changes they've brought in. I will talk about them a little bit as it relates to the gameplay, but I think that's more on the menu side for the next video here. But yeah, the accelerate types, do of course let me know what you think of them in the comments. I think they're a really silly addition, but what they're showing EA, of course, have to prove that they're doing something with the game every year. And I think that's kind of the crux of what we're getting down to. This game was always better off simple. And I'm always going to kind of argue for that. We don't need all these complexities, all these complications of the game. That was just meant to be, you hop on Ultimate Team, you put together a bunch of players you probably like in real life, maybe you like in the game, either way, and you just have fun. That's what the game was, when it was just the division system. It wasn't that competitive, it didn't matter. You didn't have to have the perfect team. If you face somebody playing the meta one match, the next 3 matches you probably weren't. Now I'm going to argue we should have a game mode like that, where you can just kind of have a little bit more fun, and not friendlies, kind of like the old division system, but friendlies is not it. But again, as the game's getting more competitive, and we've all been forced into this singular, you can't really play your own style if everybody else is going to take it ultra hyper competitive. It's not really that big of a deal, in my opinion. In that regard, if you were just able to control the cards you had a little bit more. But because we're so limited on like the accelerate types first, and then you've got to keep the accelerate types in mind with the playstyles. We'll talk about that next adjustment. And again, what I think they're doing is they've just got to prove to somebody, whether that's their shareholders, whether that's just the marketing of it, they've got to put in their advertisements that there's something different about the year. Like one of the years they come out with the new engine, it's Hypermotion or whatever it is. And I don't know much about game development engine, so I'm just not going to speak on that. I'm not saying it's not a big deal. It's just not my forte. But like they've got to make this big adjustment change to put it on the other engine for almost no other reason, in my opinion, than just saying they've made a change that year. They can't really just release, FIFA 15 is the same as FIFA 14, right? It's the exact same game. We're just refreshing all the cards. Because it's just not going to entice. There's always the core people like me who are going to pretty much buy the game no matter what. But it's not going to entice enough people for them to keep making the sales that what they want, right? It might be a shareholders thing too, where they've got to prove to the people who back them and give them money and whatever that, oh, look, the game's not exactly the same. We are keeping up with the market with every other game that's coming out, right? And of course, FIFA, part of the problem is we've just not had a competitor for it, a proper one. We've not had PES be a big enough competition in that way. UFL's not taken that stand in the way some people hoped it would either. So of course, without that competition, they've just got to say that they've made a change to entice enough people to go, maybe this year's different. Enough people buy the game, and that's all they're really looking for. And the game's got to, I would say, stop making changes in this regard. But if they're forced to, absolutely make some kind of change because they have to for the marketing, then I want to talk about how we're going to improve how I would improve these changes, right? I don't expect EA to actually implement anything. But we're going to talk about playstyles next here. And I think, I was pretty 50-50 on playstyles because on the one hand, I'm like, they might actually do the opposite of the accelerate type. They might actually allow you to customize your cards more. There's a certain way that I understand of going, maybe these cards shouldn't all be perfect. It makes sense if you want to have your card really, really good in a certain attribute that you might have to sacrifice in others. That makes sense. That's something you make in literally any game. If you take any racing game, then maybe your faster car has more fuel consumption. You've got to make more pit stops. If you've got a faster car, it's probably less durable. Any kind of weapon in a in a first-person shooter, you might have range, but then you're poor up close, so you're not gonna have a good reload speed or anything like that, right? There's always that little trade-off, and I think that's kind of what their idea was, to have those kinds of trade-offs. But it's so poorly implemented. My big thing with playstyles is when you've got one, there's literally no reason to use any other playstyle. I actually spent a lot of the year going, it's pretty useless to have multiple passing playstyles. I took a look at cards like, what was a good one? One of the Javi cards, and it's like, he's Tiki Plus and Incisive Plus, right? And I'm actually going, in most places where Incisive Plus would be useful, I can kind of get away with just using a Tiki Plus anyway. They're both powerful enough. It's not really going to make too much of a difference. Obviously, every once in a while. But not in the same way. Not in the way that having a completely new playstyle, like maybe just replacing a passing with a shooting, when you've already got a passing one, is going to just make a significantly bigger difference to the card. But all of that said, the trade-off, I understand. But what actually happens in reality is we've got all of these cards, and then if they're good at one specific playstyle, you're only ever using that one. And let me tell you, it gets so boring. I think that's a reason a lot of people are burnt out this year. Now, some of that's on the content side because we haven't had a lot of cards to replace, because EA are a little bit messy with the power curve itself. And again, that's going to be for the next video, talking about some of the content side, but as a brief primer on that, they've really messed up the power curve this year, and so we're not, like, there are big gaps in the year, like Winter Wildcards and then Team of the Year, where there are a lot of changes to your team. There's a lot of new cards you can use. And then it's another 2 months until there are really cards that get up to that power level again, right? So it takes that long. In my opinion, like, when you're stuck using a card for 2 months, maybe like that CR7 that was Rapid Plus and Finesse Plus, and then you're just in any situation, it's like, I could do a normal shot, I could do a power shot, could do a chip shot, could do low driven. It was a little bit before the low drivens hit popularity, but they still existed back then, right? But he's Finesse Plus, so I'm only ever going to get Finesse. I'm only ever going to Finesse with CR7. And I think a lot of people just get bored with, oh, it's this card again in this spot. I do the exact same thing every single time. Because in the old FIFAs, you got to keep in mind, like, if you had a CR7, if you had a Messi, they were just good at literally every attribute of the game. Sometimes better than others. I always thought, like, players with, what's the lower body gravity? I forget the actual term for it, but you know what I mean. When they're balanced and they're shorter, it's I always thought the finesses came off a little nicer, and then Messi maybe with unique animations. I personally thought would strike the ball better than CR7, but that being said, they can both score finesse long shots, but then if you have CR7 flashback with finesse plus, and then Team of the Year honorable mention Messi with tech plus and incisive plus, it's like, well, I know I'm not really taking too many long shots with Messi, whereas literally any other year than 24 and 25, Messi's finesse shots were just the best in the game. But now you've got to wait time after time after time to see if he gets the right card, or only until now. And of course, a lot of our favorite cards are the actual players we want to watch in real life, these 86 rated players and higher. You've got to wait until 8 months into the year where any of these cards are starting to get evos, right? And then you just kind of wait around and hope you get the right customization. So the playstyles, I think, just make the game really boring and repetitive. There's a certain fun with the game that I'm having now that I haven't had for the rest of the year, because we're starting to get players with 3 or 4, or even this Kaká's about to have 5 playstyle pluses, and then 7, 8, 9, 10 playstyle minuses, right? Where there's just so much more you can do with them in any situation. Like the new Insignia SBC that came out is like 3 playstyle pluses. One's a shooting, one's a dribbling, one's technically a dribbling, but I'm going to consider Rapid Plus a pace one. I know it's in the dribbling category. But then he's got a shooting minus, so there is that little bit of a debate between, well, I could finesse it always and just use the plus, but sometimes the low driven minus is just going to be more desirable here. Of course, it's not the same trade-off as low driven plus and finesse plus, but there is still that debate. And what happens with the debate is you have so much more fun in your offense, because when you've got multiple options to select from, there's so much more joy in thinking, I made the right one. When the game is static, it's just, I know what I'm supposed to do every time, and then I went and I did it. It feels like I'm playing, like, I don't like a factory simulator game, some other video game that's not FIFA, where just the choice is completely taken out of me. And what actually happened, so I think the idea, again, was EA are like, this is going to give you more choice. It gives you more choice in the menus exclusively. And of course, that assumes you've got the coins to buy all of the cards that you want, right? But if you do, just saying, like, let's say coins aren't an issue and you can assemble whatever team you want, you've got so much choice in terms of how you want to set your team up and what positions and all that in the menu. But in the game, when you've got these players in their specific spots, there's only ever 1 or 2 things, again, for most of the year, that you were able to do with any of these cards for so long. You can kind of get that example there with Fermin Lopez. Again, the cards are a little bit out of date by now, and also these clips are a bit old. But that is a card with 99 shooting, and the only shooting playstyle is Power Shot Plus. There's no, what is it? No finesse, no chip shot, no low driven or anything. Even though he's 99 shooting, so you think his shooting should be phenomenal. But his finesses basically have no curve, and his what is it? His low dribbles are fine, kind of. They're not great though. And yeah, for all of that, for me, it's just, where's all the enjoyment for the rest of the year? And let me harp on that point a little bit longer. So when you've got this whole like team that you're very specifically kind of trying to build towards for the whole year, again, and now it's starting to open up. Whereas that whole year we're just that limited. It's not fun in the same way. Because any other video game, it's like, oh, I know what I can do in this situation as long as I pull out this ability or I pull out this idea. I guess maybe the other game, that's maybe the problem, because a lot of the other games I play are a little bit more well-rounded in that way. But I know there are other games like Overwatch or like character shooters where you do have that kind of limitation. Where it is, okay, I know I've got a speed character. Excuse me there, my apologies. I'm ruining the podcast idea. But I know I've got a speed character and that's going to come with other disadvantages. But FIFA's not a character shooter. Like there's no reason for this game to be that limited and the way that it hasn't been in previous years. I just want the cards to go forward and for me to have anything, because again, the fun for me is that I know I made the right decision out of a plethora of other decisions I could have made. And we're going to get on that point a little bit later. I guess we should talk about roles, which really I'm going to have the same complaint for. And the whole role system, I think, I was kind of excited because I thought roles were going to be entirely implemented differently. I know people were kind of talking about, like, it sounds like a copy of PES, or it sounds like a copy of, what was it, Football Manager? And maybe it is, I don't really play those games, but for me, what we're really missing for the role system, or rather, what I was hoping the role system was going to be, was what I would actually describe as tendencies. And the idea here being, like, a player like Lionel Messi, I would give a false nine tendency. You can call it something else. I know false nine is the 9 position, and you can play Messi as a cam or right wing or striker or whatever. But for me, I would call it a drop-off tendency. The idea behind Messi is you program it where, like, every 5 seconds, if he is marked, he goes somewhere where there is space. And yeah, if there's a plethora of space forward, maybe he does make a dash forward. But in any other situation, just generally speaking, he's, like, if the defense is well set, like, every 5 seconds, he picks his head up, scans the field, and then, like, runs back to wherever there's space. If the opponent has 2 CDMs and a cam, he's maybe moving to kind of center mid, maybe a little bit offset. You know, he drops to that right side, like he would in real life. Maybe if they're super well set in like a 4-4-2, he might even drop in front of the center mid. He'll come all the way back to the halfway line. And you just kind of deal with that and go, Messi's got these attributes. Even if his positioning is going to be a little bit weird here, it's very realistic. I mean, you see him take up those positions all the time for Barcelona, right? And just go, you know what, I'm going to become basically a midfield 4 with Xavi, Busquets, and Iniesta. Or something like CR7, you know, of course you can give multiple tendencies, so you can make him kind of a get in behind tendency or a target forward tendency based on what kind of, like, which part of the career. Obviously, he's gotten a little bit more of like a target forward as he's gotten older. But if the drop-off tendency is that false 9, where you've got players you can think kind of messy, you might give it to Mertens and Insigne, players who don't have that kind of strength, who need a little bit more space to operate in. And you give them like the drop-off, and then you can also give Mertens like a getting behind tendency. And then you start thinking like Guirassy and these other players that are going to occupy the center backs and just take up space, allow your other players to make the runs around them. And you just got to make it all really intelligent. So there'd be a lot of fun in the menus for how you would actually set a team like this up. I really, like, part of the thing with my playstyle is I prefer the drop-off no matter what. Last year, and like I played this the whole year, and it was one of my favorite, maybe my favorite formation I've ever managed to set up in any FIFA. It was the false 9 for FC24. The fullbacks were on overlap, and the left wing and the right wing were on like free roam. The center forward was on false 9. The center mids were normally just balanced, sometimes get into the box for cross, sometimes stay on the edge of box, but like the front 3 really dropped off. But it was the movement of the center mids and the movement of the fullbacks that allowed me to play like such a drop-off style for the front 3, right? But there's got to be movement somewhere. So obviously if I try to, like, if I'm talking about this drop-off tendency, I can't play a full front four of drop off. Obviously, it's going to have certain issues, but the fun here would be they need to actually program specific things with specific other things. If you have in this game a false nine and a shadow striker, the idea behind the two switching could be incredibly fun. There's a lot of really unique movement you could get out of the two, a lot of unique situations you won't be able to get out of any other setup. It could just be a nice little change of pace. Maybe you play that for like the qualifiers or something if you're getting a little bit bored of the game and just the easier games you get. Anything like that, right? There's so many cool ideas you could do, so many cool challenges. That said, if you actually try to play False Nine and Shadow Striker, you can tell, like, EA never tested the two or never did anything to make them have any kind of movement off of one another. Like, the False Nine will just drop essentially into the way of the Shadow Striker and just block the Shadow Striker from running whatsoever. It is ridiculous. Whereas, like, if my player's here and here, they should be able to, like, it doesn't matter if they're running and, like, touching, like, bumping shoulders as they run past. They should be intelligent enough to make a run, even if it's directly past the other player, but no, not whatsoever in this game. So whatever they do with the role system for the future, it's got to be something where they're, like, intentionally designing, like, role A to work with specific runs with role B. Like, you should be able to see your advanced forward striker, like, start making a run, and your playmaker Cam decide, oh, I can see that the run's being made. I'm going to shift like 3 yards to the left to receive a pass, so I know that I can make the ball onto the advanced forward, right? Or if your playmaker's just not in a position to make a run at all, or sorry, if your playmaker's not in a position to receive the ball, your striker should not be moving because they're going to make a run for nobody to be able to make that pass, right? But you can tell that the timing of every kind of run this year is just, I know it's the first year they've had with the system. They probably didn't have too long to develop it. I've heard that EA's development teams are really separate, so there's a chance that they just didn't really get to interact a lot this year. Maybe, like, hopefully it's a better system for next year. But again, the tendency thing for me would fix the whole role plus plus thing, because it's not going to limit, like, where I'm able to play the card. If I want to play Messi as a left cam, I'd be able to. If I want to play him as a left mid, I'd be able to. I still think we should have that customization in terms of the in terms of how we set our teams up. I don't want it to be limited to role plus pluses in specific positions, because if we have that again next year, this is a really important point. If we have to start next year with single role pluses until December, really, it's going to be so boring for those first couple months, right? The power drop off, there's always a bit of a new, like, oh, we all learned the new FIFA, but also these cards feel so underpowered from what we were just using the previous year. But this year's going to be worse than that than ever, especially if we're going in with 5 or maybe more playstyle pluses and all the role plus pluses and everything into the start of next year with nothing. It's going to be tough. But yeah, for me, it's just, I'd really love to be able to get a Messi card and just play him drop off no matter what position. It could be cam in a 4-3-2-1. It could be cam in a 4-2-1-3. It could be right wing, could be striker, it could be right mid, anywhere. And just really customize, okay, if he's going to be making these runs here, then I need an overlapping fullback to support. Or I need somebody, I might need an advanced forward complete, in terms of this year's game. Somebody like that who's actually going to make a run out wide and occupy the space that Messi's never going to go into, because he doesn't make runs out wide. That's not his game. He's going to drop off, play central. You might take one of your center mids and have them replace, because you get that in real life. You get these teams that play completely different in possession than out of possession. We had that a couple times at Dortmund, where Pascal Gross is kind of this, not necessarily holding, but one of the defensive center mids in kind of a 3-back or a 4-back, depending on which part of the year. But then he's playing like entirely along the right or left side, because he is our best crosser. So he is ostensibly a center mid in defending, but he is entirely just a right back or right mid, sometimes a right wing, just trying to get crosses in and build up. And you're thinking, that's Pascal Gross. He's got like 50 pace. He's 34. He's not the player you want out wide, but it's what worked for us and just delivering those crosses in, right? So I just think the customization you could have with a system like that would be really fun. Not the limitations of, does this player have like pluses in this for basically the entirety of the year? And so I think that's the problem we've had for the past couple of years. Again, from my opinion, has been they're introducing all of these things, and they're either not combining them to work with the other systems right. They're not making the AI to interact with the rest of the AI properly, or they're just taking away the ability for us to play in the way that we want. Both are incredibly frustrating to me. Okay, so we've talked about what the couple changes have been over the last couple of years. And I want to emphasize the game had skill moves or like a new shot. We had low driven shots 1 year. Trivella's become a little bit more powerful in like 22. We introduce it as more of a mechanic, whereas before it's just an outside foot shot or what. Like, these things happen, right? There's always something new. But we've not had these massive fundamental changes to the game. Like, and again, the gameplay itself is entirely different. Some years it's more responsive or not. Some years, like, the meta is entirely different. But my point being, like, they don't introduce these kinds of things until the last couple of years, and I don't know why they're making just massive change after massive change to the gameplay. They know something's wrong, but I don't think, like, there's no realistic way to look at the game and go, you know what's going to fix this thing that we've been working on for years and years, that we should have been incrementally making better every single time. One completely massive change to something that basically nobody asked for, right? It's not the way to go about it. So I want to mention, I talked about before how there's this idea to me where the fun of attacking is having multiple viable options and picking the right one. What they need to do to balance the gameplay for something like this, and this is my main thesis for all of this, what they need to do to balance this is make sure that there are several things you can do on offense, because it means that the opponent had to defend several things, and if I got through, that means I chose the right one. Not, I chose the same one every single time, and the opponent couldn't defend it because it's either the most meta, most powerful thing where there's not really a counter to it, or because it's what my player has in the situation, because my player has finesse shot, and so I did finesse shot. It becomes so automatic and so boring, this game. I like... a lot of this idea comes from, so my other game is Rocket League. It's the game I actually got like even higher level in that one than I did in FIFA, if you can believe it. I spent so much time in that game, and it's just a better esport. I don't think anybody's really gonna dispute that. In my opinion, it's the best esport where there's basically two instances of RNG the whole time, and one is what the kickoff spawns are. They're always equal, it's just which ones that happen to be chosen for a game. And then they're always in the same order, so it's not even that much RNG. And then do you spawn in place A or place B when you demo and then have spend 3 seconds and then get respawned? And that's the only RNG in the entire game. Everything else is just physics-based. So of course it's a better esport. Like, nobody's really expecting FIFA to be that level. There's always some RNG, and we're going to talk about that too. But yeah, for me, it's in that game. There's always a meta, and then there's a counter meta. People learn how to defend it, and so there's got to be something new that kind of gets developed. But the strength of any individual thing means everybody's learning to defend that one thing, and that means it's always just more and more viable to learn anything else, because people are no longer having the same experience defending it and just not as prepared for it to happen in any situation, right? And for me, that's the real fun in any kind of competitive game like this, is making sure I've got several viable, decent options going forward. Not a bunch of very, very mediocre ones, and then one really, really strong one. I'm very much like this with skill moves, where I actually don't want skilling, like, I want skilling to be good. I don't want any skill move to be stand out in the way that we've got. I think shot cancels are ridiculous. I think Magiti cancels are ridiculous. I think Elasticos are ridiculous. They all can exist in the game, and that's fine. But the fact that we've got, like, 3, 4, 5 skill moves, you can add, like, ball roll fake shots and trickster fake shots into that as well, and then the L1 heal to heal, and that's like maybe these directional nutmegs, but I barely see them come up against me, right? And that's about it that like any competitive player knows at any given time, and that leaves 40 other skill moves in existence through the rest of the game, and I don't want any of them to be 100% good. I also don't want all 50 of them to be, 70% good. I'm okay with some, like the lesser known sideways heel chops, or like the Ronaldo chop that, used to be really good. They're not really in the game as much. Obviously, like the ball roll and the body feint should be decent, but not like super, super powerful, right? But I don't want any of these to be like ridiculously broken. I just want the decision to decide which one to go with to feel good, because there could have been multiple I went with, and I chose the one I did, and the opponent didn't defend that because I set things up well. I think a big problem with this year is there's only really one attack you've got at any given time too. It's like there's one run being made. You see here, and it was basically going to work, but look at how Neymar only makes a run after Bale stops his run, right? This clip here, right? It's not this one. I might have lost it. The idea being, so like, there's one move being made at any given time, and that means I might have like the one option on, but then there's nothing else going on for my attack, which means I've got no decisions to make. I either do the one thing that's on, or I pretty much fail my attack, or I'm just waiting and waiting and waiting for anything else to happen, right? And it gets so boring in that regard. But then it's also the one run being made is pretty powerful, so I might as well go with it. But it just means every single attack you've got is a counterattack, and again, I get bored of that too. But for me, without like, it's just in Rocket League. So we've got like so many different mechanics. There's flipper sets, there's ceiling shots, there's double taps you could go with. There's air dribbles, there's aerial bumps, there's ground flicks, there's ground shots you can go with. And basically any of them you can integrate into your game at any time. Any of the given Rocket League pros at any time, or some are better at certain mechanics, some are better at others. And you can go ahead with just any of them, and they're all competitively viable, because they're all just brought out by how quickly you can do things and how well you set up your offense to pretty much make it look like you're doing something else and force your opponent to defend that. Again, so here's, like, if there's only, in Rocket League, if there's only a ground shot, in FIFA, if there's only a through ball on, and your opponent goes to defend that, and they fail to defend it anyway because it's just that powerful, it doesn't feel good as a defender because I knew what you were doing. I just couldn't stop it because the players don't exist with the play styles, or the AI just doesn't work in that way. Like, it's not really on me at that point. You just did the powerful thing. And also, you've only done that powerful thing the whole game. Of course I know it's going to happen, and I still conceded 3 times because of it. All you have done the entire match is just the same through ball nonsense, like kind of what this opponent's doing here, and I stopped it. You still get it, and that's all this opponent's done this whole match, and they're still going to go ahead and score 3 against me. It's like, I know that's your attack every single time, and I spend like 98 times successfully defending it, but then the 99th and the 100th you've gone and scored, and now it's a close match and it's frustrating. Whereas if I know my opponent has the through ball, and also has a long shot, and also has a skill move, and also has a different pass on, and also has the ability to delay to wait for a better run to be made, and I know, okay, I've got to defend 4 of them, but the opponent chose the 5th one that time, and I concede, you know what, maybe I could have defended a little bit better. Maybe I could have delayed, maybe I could have made a less rash decision somewhere. Even if they kept possession and it just bought me a little bit of time, there's always something else I can go, you know what, maybe I can learn from that one. And if I concede, I can go up the other end of the pitch and know there's multiple things I can do, which means I can score from pretty much every attack. This year, there are so many attacks where it feels like there really is such a little chance to score from. And then there's so many attacks where it's, you know what, this one was just broken. How is my opponent meant to defend this? And there's no fun in that either. Like the AI, I've mentioned how bad the runs are, but there are some times where it's just so good, where they make this run where it's right between like the opponent's center backs and their CDMs, so the CDMs stop tracking it. The CDMs just can't drop back far enough. But before the center backs are able to pick up the run, or the one situation where the center backs happen to be occupied by one of the other players, so they're just not able to pick up that run because of another situation, they're going, you know what, I set up things maybe well in this attack, but also I've spent 90 minutes of the match and this is the only time this specific situation has happened. And it doesn't feel as good because what was the opponent meant to do to actually defend it? That's a big thing for me. So what they need to do, I really, like, it's not the problem of the meta. The problem is that every single year for the past couple of years, we've had an S, like an S plus tier meta. Something that every single player does without fail. Everybody learns 2 specific skill moves, and everybody learns either the specific through balls we've got this year or the specific run patterns of the 4-2-1-3. Last year they learned the switches from the right back to the left back, like fully 70, 80 yard diagonal switches that are just ridiculous passes you don't see in real life. I'm talking like further than I've ever seen Trent kick a ball, right? Like ridiculous passes. Into a cross because the aerial meta was there. The year before, I don't quite remember. I think we had a specific skill move combination, and then also like the Trivellas. The Trivellas were effective in 24. They were really effective in 23 and 22. And I know people have said like it's good that they existed because they were a counter to some of the drop back play we had then. But then the problem is it's the only way we've got to score. And again, Trivellas just have never felt good as a mechanic to me, especially in those years when the Trivellas were like, I don't know, like 70% of goals in any game were a Trivella at any time, right? Or 70% of the goals I was conceding from an opponent. I know what you're doing. I know you're getting into this position every single time. I know it's the same fullback overlap into a center mid, into a left forward or a right forward in that 4-3-2-1, into the same ball roll, into the same Trivella. I've seen this a billion times. I've stopped it a billion times. I've also conceded to it a billion times. It's the same thing over and over, and it's effective because sometimes your AI is just not in the right spot. It just happens that way. But again, for me, it's got to be this decision where instead of having this S+++ tier meta, and then everything else being B tier, we need, like, even if there's an S+, there's got to be a couple in A. There's got to be a couple in S-. There's got to be a couple others that we can actually make these decisions for, because that's where the fun in FIFA comes from. Again, the entire thing for me is, yes, the cross maybe was effective, but there are other things I could have done in the situation. And all of that, like, the reason other things also need to be effective is because it makes the defense have to defend other things. I'm somebody who hates crosses as a FIFA mechanic. I do not think they're developed enough. So for me, I would want just more buttons related to crossing. I think there should be a timed jump. So like if you're doing shot, if you're shooting off a header, you should have to press and hold circle to time up how high your player is actually going to jump, or like if they're going to have a hang time in the air. Like, I know it's not realistic, but you know what I mean. Kind of that Ronaldo jump where it just seems to linger up there. But you've got to time it right, which means there's actually some skill to heading rather than just hitting square. Like, this is my problem with crossing. If you're a fan of crossing, you've heard me despise crossing for like time and time out on this channel. I just think it's a bad mechanic because all that exists is you press square and then you press circle. And that's so much less intricate than every other mechanic we've got in the system. I'm not saying it's not like something you can't enjoy looking at, but on the controller it's not fun to perform. And as a defender, there's very little I can do. I'm just trying to jockey and block your cross, and then I'm also just pressing square and hoping that my player outjumps you. And I can switch off my fullback and switch to my center back to try to get them in a better position. Yes, and I do that. What a phenomenal flick that was. That's the first clip we'll talk about, actually, on the game there. But yeah, like, there's just a couple things you can do for blocking, but then when there's no skill to whether or not my player's going to jump or not, especially this year when sometimes they just don't perform the jump at all. Like, I pressed the button. Why is nothing happening? It's just, I don't think it's a very engaging mechanic. And there's not a lot of skill to it. So you can't be better or worse at heading, really. That said, I think crossing should still be a mechanic, because if you're down the wing and crosses mean nothing, then all I ever need to do is keep a little bit of distance from you. I can give you the room to cross because you're not going to use it, which is much more effective for me as a defender. If crossing has, and it can just be 20, 30% effectiveness, but I have to make that decision and go, I've got my fullback here. Am I actually going to switch to the fullback and move them closer to get close to you and guard any potential cross? With the idea being, I've stepped to you, there's now space between me, I've disconnected from the center back. There's actually a little bit of space between the center back and between me now. That is space you can exploit if you're a good dribbler. That's the whole point of all these different things existing. Again, there can be skill moves that are like 70% effective, that are really, really strong. But the 40% ones should be like, there should be some skill to it where I can go, you know what, in this specific situation, it's this one to pull out. And my opponent didn't even know how to defend that in that spot, and that's what's going to make it really fun for me to do. And that's what makes offense powerful, is that we've got all these attacking things, and the defense has to decide which ones to guard. I just think for the past couple of years, I'm so bored of players only ever doing one thing on offense. When we've got 70 billion, like every single year, we have more mechanics than the last year. There's always another shot type. There's always more skill moves. There's always more we can do with our players. That the idea being that every single year, people seem to be using less and less of the whole mechanical system is really, really boring to me. It's also just not for it's not good for a competitive video game when everybody's doing the same thing, in my opinion. Okay, so I think that's all my thoughts on that kind of stuff. I think, kind of as a final point, I just want to talk about maybe a bit of the defensive side. I've talked a lot about the offense, so I want to balance things a little bit. And this is kind of a simple point. And again, I don't expect this to be implemented whatsoever. But if we're going to have 80 billion attacking mechanics, we need to have at least 60 billion defending ones. And what I mean is, if we think about offense, we've got ground passes with tiki-taka. We've got double tap ground pass to have a slight chip to your pass. We've got driven passes. We've got swerve driven passes and trivela driven passes. We've got precision passes and precision swerve passes that are manually angled and aimed through balls. We've got normal through balls. We've got the double tap through ball. We've got the L1 through ball. We've got, I'm not going to list them all. I know there's like 7 different types of crosses with square and then double tap square and all that. Again, we've got like 40 skill moves at any time, 5 of which are really super meta. So even if we just say there were only 5 skill moves in the game, that's still like, I don't know, 10, 15 passing types, 5 skill moves. Let's say there's 20 things there. 5 or 6 different shooting things, that's 25. We've got manual player locks. We've got manual player runs. We've got the other type of player lock I always forget, where you can either like player lock and specifically control only your player, or player lock and control somebody else you're not, like, that isn't on the ball. Let's just say there's what? And I'm forgetting something here too. And the other dribbling methods. So there's L2 dribbling, L2 R1. Not that all these are super effective, but L2 R1, L2 R1, L2 R2, L1, normal left stick, and I honestly feel like I'm forgetting one. But there's and trickster flicks. That's just like 40 or 45 different attacking mechanics. And if we think about defense, let's go through them. So we've got slide tackle, double tap slide tackle where they stand up. There might be an R1 stand tackle or slide tackle where they are a little bit more powerful. There's sand tackle. There's R1 sand tackle, I think, is a little more powerful. There's professional foul. There's jockey. There's sprint jockey. There's second man press. There's double tap R1 to do a different second man press. Goalie movement. What's the manually pulling out your goalie? Just the triangle button. Goalie rush out. And you can add offside trap maybe. That's 13. Team press is 14. I can't honestly think of any others at this moment. You can let me know if I'm forgetting anything, but like that's all of the main buttons I ever press on defense. There's bruiser. Okay, so let's say there are 15 defensive things, and I listed 40 offensive things. And again, that depends on how you want to categorize how many skill moves you want to put on that list and everything. But like, point being, there's so many things you can do on offense that just don't have corresponding defensive actions to them. We have shooting, there's no block button. We have passing on offense, we have no intercept button. There's trickster skill moves, there's no aerial defending skill move, or no aerial defensive button. We have directional nutmegs, there's no defend nutmeg button. Another big problem that we've had over the past couple of years, and this is actually my biggest thing with FIFA. I'm glad I remember this, because like the number one problem I have with FIFA. Let me bring up this idea. There was a study done a couple of years ago. I'm sorry, I don't have a link to the study. But the study said that out of the top 5 main sports in America, so that's American football, European football, hockey, basketball, baseball, I think. Out of the main 5 sports there, the one that the team successfully won, who was the team that quote-unquote deserved to win the most, was basketball. And the idea being that in a basketball match, you get like, I know the scores are like 100 to 90 sometimes. And let's say it's 100 to 100. I know that some are 1 point, some are 2 point, and some are 3 point baskets. But even if there's only like 80 scores a game, 80 times the ball actually goes in the basket, even though some of those are associated with more points. The fact that there's so many times the ball's going in the net, in the basket, means that each individual time that the ball does go in is pretty minimized, which means a lot of the luck of, oh, this was one really fortunate time the ball happened to go in, is also minimized. Whereas if you think in a sport like soccer, where you do sometimes get the football, you do sometimes get the 1-0 game where, the one team had like 5 XG and they just happened not to score, and the other team got like really, really lucky and only had 0.5 XG and happened to win. In a low-scoring sport, sometimes it's more likely in a low-scoring sport for the team that didn't deserve to win to sometimes still get that win, right? And so what FIFA needs to be is a high-scoring game. And I'm tired of a lot of these games. I'm getting like 2-1s, 3-1s. When in a game with a proper skill gap, some of those games would be like 8-4, 9-4. I'm talking like massive score lines, right? And those seem unrealistic, and I think EA doesn't want that. But if you want an actual competitive game, it undeniably, without fail, has to be like that. There has to be way more benefit to the offense than there is to the defense. Because again, the point being, this is never going to be a game like Rocket League. It's never going to have that limitation on RNG. I don't want it to be. And yes, that might make it less of a perfect esport, but it's football. There should be some headers that go in. There should be corners that go in, and corners are always going to be a mess because you can just take a long shot that is never going to go in from like 40 yards. That is an undeserved opportunity that you get a corner from. And then if you score off that corner, it's just really like you did nothing at all whatsoever to deserve this. You did not break me down. You took one random shot from distance, got lucky to get a corner, and then scored off that. Like, that kind of thing is always going to be bad for an esport. And also should still exist in FIFA. I'm not saying it's not. Because if you eliminate the RNG from that, then you've got to eliminate the RNG from long shots. And if long shots aren't a thing, then you never have to defend long shots, which is the same thing like the crosses, where if you never have to defend long shots, then you can just drop off and park the bus and always sit back, which means it's so much harder to dribble against you. But if the long shot's a threat and I look like I might take one, and you pull your player up and step up to try to block it, then, there's actually, okay, I've got now space to dribble behind you, and I can use that to my advantage. If I'm a good enough player, I can fake it and look like I'm taking a long shot and gain that advantage, right? And again, that's the benefit of offense having multiple things it can do that are effective at any time. Which is part of the problem with playstyles. You don't necessarily have that effectiveness, at least until this point of the year, in the way that you did in the past years. Anyway, so all of that to say, FIFA needs to be a high-scoring game because if you get a random bounce goal, if you score something undeserved, if you score something easy where you just sprint down the touchline, I press tackle, it doesn't happen. Like, the button sometimes just doesn't work this year. And, you get a cross and it's really unlucky and I really should have defended it, but nothing happened to go my way that attack. I'm not even going to be frustrated if I know I can go up the other end and there's a bunch of things I can do to make every single attack a goal. Not just feel like sometimes an attack's a goal. You know how powerful the AI is off kickoffs? Like, I score a lot of kickoffs and I barely concede any because I know it's not just like I'm really good at using that mechanic, but I'm really powerful at utilizing the AI when it's making specific movements, and it just never makes that specific movement unless it's a kickoff. So for me, it's all this just like, it's got to be a high-scoring game because I know anytime I concede, I can go up the other end of the match and score and just even out the game once again. I'm not going to be that frustrated about it. The problem now is, you can see a goal, and it means so much in any individual match that you can't go up the other end and be guaranteed that if I do well, I'm going to be rewarded for it. If you attack well, you really need to be rewarded for it in these games. And a way that could all be balanced for me is there just needs to be more defensive buttons. There needs to be a block button. There needs to be an intercept button. There needs to be a defend-specific skill moves button. All of this for me, so like I'd reimagine what's on the defensive controller entirely. I would actually add it where there's a left foot button and a right foot button. Whether or not EA wants to mean, like, if, your defender's got a 2-star weak foot if they're worse with their left foot than their right foot. I don't really want that. I think they should be even on both. But you can argue, I might be realistic. I know there are players that are better at tackling with one foot than the other. I don't really want that, but again, you can argue. That's disappointing. That one didn't go in. For me, it's like, if I press the tackle button, there's so many times where like they do it with their left foot and they're right-footed, and I expect the right-footed animation, and I can see the pen instead of winning the ball back, where it just, if they used the other foot, like normally they do, and again, in a delay-ridden, like, infested game like this one, of course, like, that happens more this year than ever any other year, because I press the button and it happens with delay on it, more likely this year than ever. If I can just, like, hold L1 and then press tackle and know it's going to be left-footed, and then hold R1 and press tackle and know it's going to be right-footed, a lot of that would be eliminated for me. So for me, what I do, L1 is the left foot menu, L1 and circle is left foot stand tackle, L1 and X is left foot block, like block a shot that's going into that direction, L1 and square is slide tackle, L1 in triangle is probably like left shoulder barge, right? Same with R1, so same, just the right side of the menu. Not holding L1 or R1 on defense. Triangle is still the goalie rush out. I think I would do like neutral specific actions. So it would be like to block getting a nutmeg, I would press like circle and not left foot or right foot. So you do kind of a circle tackle or like a circle block. So you could do no L1 R1 and then just X and do circle block, and then neither and then do circle and just kind of maybe make a really neutral lunge or something like that. And then maybe just like square without L1 or R1 would be second man press or something like that, right? You just have to completely redefine the controller. I don't know, like you'd have to do maybe double tap circle to kind of defend an aerial skill move. And then of course the like neutral, not pressing left foot or right foot and just doing a tackle would be your defend nutmeg. But if you're going to have all these attacking animations, attacking things you can do, it's kind of ridiculous to put these like skill moves in the game and not have any way to actually counter them on defense. And I think that's a big reason why defense is so powerful, because EA know you're not going to have a counter button for everything. So the AI just has to do things for you. I'm talking about directional, like nutmegging opponents as if they're a thing. You can't nutmeg people in this game. You can barely trickster flick them in this game. And that's because, again, there's no button for it. And EA know there's no button for it, and so they just make the animation happen automatically. And that's not right. There's got to be a defensive, like, specific thing that you're queuing to make those defensive actions happen. So I think a lot of that would fix it, because I know if my opponent actually pressed the intercept button, if they're pressing, like, left foot and triangle or whatever, I know, okay, they actually queued an intercept in this situation. I made the pass too obvious, or there was too much of a distance and I made it too easy, or I passed it too close to a player with really good at intercept stats. I just know like that wasn't the right time to do that. But also, my opponent did a button press, so I know that they did well defensively. Whereas this year, it's like an interception happens or it doesn't, based on nothing that my opponent put on the controller, and it's just not really enjoyable to experience. So yeah, all of that for me, I think that's pretty much the main points in all of this. I should cover, of course, now I didn't go through, like, fix the delay, fix the servers. Of course, those are pretty much number one. I should at least mention them at some point in this video, right? Obviously. The fact that this year is slower than any other FIFA we've had is absolutely absurd, and it's for no reason. Like, last year felt fine responsive. I don't know why this year had to be so much worse than anything else we've experienced. But yeah, the whole concept of just make the game enjoyable, make it arcadey. I don't need all this realism, I don't need all these animations. The fun of the game in the old FIFAs, the entirety of all the fun we used to have was just, like, I pressed a button and I knew it would happen, and yes, the long shots are ridiculous and all of that, but if you're going to have some of these ridiculous things in the game, then make the players move quickly. Make them actually feel good to control on the left stick and on the ball. It is wild how much worse the left stick is now than it used to be. You've got to memorize L2, R2, like I've got to memorize L1 and then R1 and so many different dribbling mechanics. If I want my players to ever just successfully hold on to the ball, not even just beat opponents, but hold on to the ball in any regard, I've got to learn shot cancels and trickster fake shots and, you know, this little L1 Elastico type skill move and also Elasticos and so many different shot cancels and like just make the players feel okay on the left stick. Give us that as an option again so that I know like when I'm choosing the right option, I actually feel better about it. Okay, I think we're coming out to the end here. Might be one more point I wanted to get to. Let's see if I can recall it real quick. Hopefully you have all enjoyed this. I know this has been kind of rambly. Let me know if you liked maybe the free roam format of this, or if you wish I would have structured it more. I can take that into maybe regards in some of the future videos. But yeah, let's see. Was there one more point I was going to go through? Hold on. Okay, yes, my final point. My biggest complaint, you all know me as a dribbler, right? If you've watched my content before. My biggest complaint with the dribbling this year is if we're going to have the explosive controlled lengthy thing, there's got to be a bigger difference between it. You cannot have explosive controlled lengthy and then like give us the ability to have these explosive attackers and have lengthy defenders still be more agile. It is absolutely ridiculous this year. The amount of skill moves I can do that get past the opponent and then they have more agility with me and just catch back up anyway. The jockeying is too strong in that regard. And again, that's a symptom to me of there being not enough defensive buttons, so that EA just makes things too varied. There's not like a specific defend skill move button or anything that you can have a skill gap because some defenders are going to be better using that thing than others, right? Now, obviously, I'm doing some qualifier games, so I'm getting some nice dribbles here. It's maybe not the best examples, but there's so many times where just these defenders with 80 agility are turning so much quicker than my attackers with 99 with like perfect body types and press proven plus and all that, right? It's honestly absurd how just powerful some of those cards are. So for me, as maybe a final thing, you've got to give us a little bit more agility. I'm perfectly fine with the sprinting penalty. I do not mind. Like, it's ridiculous because obviously Messi in his prime in real life, if he's through in on goal, you're not, like, nobody's catching him. There is no, like, basically any player in football in, you know, any kind of good footballing condition, good athletic condition, you give any talent, any professional footballer a 5-10 yard head start, nobody's actually catching up. So the explosive lengthy controlled thing is kind of ridiculous to me just off the face of it. But you want to have it like that? I understand the penalty of it, as long as you are actually giving us the ability to out agility them. When I'm gonna have 99 agility and they've got what is it? They've got 80 or whatever. So yeah, to me, another massive thing. Just make sure that we've got the responsiveness with these cards, and I'm actually going to be able to shift side to side. I'm not even saying I have to dribble, like, it's not out dribble them every single time. I'm, again, perfectly okay with doing a skill move, and if they react properly, them catching back up and me gaining very, very little benefit from it. Just a little space, maybe enough to just kind of make sure I'm going to hold on to the ball for another touch or two. But I'm not saying because I do one skill move and I didn't necessarily, like, time it perfect that I should be getting past you. It's just there needs to be a little bit more ability to retain the ball on offense. But again, there should be more defensive abilities to negate all of that. There can be better like second man presses or just more defensive buttons to defend that skill move. So yeah, so many things I wish would actually happen with this game. Obviously, I want it more arcadey, more fun. I want us to actually enjoy playing the game because I've never seen a community of people who despise the game they play so much. And a lot of that has to do with competitive game modes. And yeah, I know I didn't talk about like specific playstyles. There's a couple I do want to cover through the content portion. But we are at the end here. We're going to call it here. So yeah, content portion, I'll talk a little bit about maybe just the playstyles themselves. But I want to cover maybe SBC. I definitely want to cover the power curve because I've got a big idea on how to fix that, how I would do it personally. Nothing like what the old FIFAs used to be, but if we're going to have this many new cards in the game, they've got to have a new system to do it, in my opinion. And we'll talk about the cards released, the amount of promos we're getting, some of the rewards, some of the game modes, and that kind of stuff. So if you do have any recommendations and stuff for me to cover in those, do of course let me know in the comments. Let me know your thoughts in general on this. Was this a worthwhile video? Obviously not. EA is not going to listen to it. Even if they did, they won't do anything. But hopefully you did enjoy, and maybe this was something you could put on while you had to go do chores or something. Maybe decent to listen to. So hope you all did enjoy. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll catch you all in the next one. Take it easy now, everybody. Peace.